Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel called zuzanareacts, where I learn all about India with your help, and I just share my point of view as someone from Slovakia, which is actually in the geographical heart of Europe. So today I wanted to continue with a spiritual quest, and we're going to look apparently at the greatest debate that there is about life of virtue and faith, if it's enough to end pain and suffering. So it's going to be quite of a lengthy video. I'm going to share it with you, and I'll just share the speed on like 1.5 or 1.2, just simply because I think that this man speaks quite slow, so I think it will in the end work out just fine. And I'm very curious. Perhaps I'll just move this somewhere else so I can have a better view. And I'm just very, very curious to explore this with you. And I've never done a video so long myself, so I will see how I edit it in the end, and depending on what I have to say. But I'm so excited to explore it. So let's just dive right in.
Many stories in India, and often they involve gods and goddesses, demons, princesses, magical weapons, apocalyptic battles, miraculous resurrections, even rivers descending from the heavens. The story I'm about to tell you is about 3 Indian people that argued for 32 days straight. Now, don't be disappointed, because when Indian people argue, it's at the very least, it's entertaining. Now, Indians like to argue about anything, everything, and even about nothing, especially about nothing. Hundreds of books have been written in India about the nature of nothingness. It's called nirvana. It's no wonder that we invented the concept of zero. It's going to be entertaining, but more importantly, the outcome of this debate between these 3 people that argued for 32 days answered an ancient question, a very profound question, perhaps the most profound of all questions. You see, for as long as humanity has been in existence, man has asked, if pain and suffering are a part of life, if they are inevitable, how do we get over them? Tribes, kingdoms, empires, civilizations, cultures, they've all answered this. And interestingly, they've come up with exactly 2 answers to this question. No more, just 2 answers. Okay. The first answer says, embrace life, enjoy life, take care of your family, take care of those who are in need, lead a life of discipline and moderation. Then you it's like depositing into your cosmic bank account. And if you lead a life of selfishness and evil and laziness, it's like withdrawing. If your bank account is positive, they say, it's very simple, then you have health and happiness. If your bank account is negative, then you have misery and disease. It's all about karma. Be a householder. They don't use the term karma, but that's what it's referring to. So that's one answer. The second answer they give is to say, turn away from life. Control your senses. Seek God. Meditate on God. Pray to God. And through divine grace and an experience of divine bliss, your pain and suffering will be removed. Okay. This is the way of the renunciant. Renunciant is sannyasi in Sanskrit. It's the way of the sannyasi. It's all about God. So the first way, first answer, how to get rid of pain and suffering, householder and the way of karma. Second, sannyasi and the way of divine knowledge, jnana. This debate answered this. Now, which one is better, householder or a sannyasi? And this debate answered this question so satisfactorily that it has reverberated. The answer has reverberated through the tunnels of time and echoes even today. Hundreds of saints and social workers, politicians and philanthropists, even Mahatma Gandhi derived inspiration from the outcome of his debate. Wow. We too, here at Ananda, where we strive to build cooperative spiritual communities indirectly, this debate is the linchpin centerpiece of our inspiration too. Wow. So let's transport ourselves across space and back in time 1,200 years ago. We find ourselves in the middle of the Indian subcontinent. There flows a beautiful, a holy river. It's called the Narmada River. Along the banks of this river is an ancient town called Mahishmati. It's an impossibly ancient town. It was said that way back it was once the capital of the entire world. But these days, 1,200 years ago, it was the center of learning. You see, this was the time which was the golden age of Indian philosophy. The eternal truths of the Vedas had been distilled into not one, not two, but 6 philosophical streams, very nuanced, very, very deep. There was Nyaya, the system of logic, Vaisheshika, the atomic theory, Sankhya, metaphysics, Yoga, the science of the mind, Mimamsa, the way of the householder and karma, and Vedanta, the way of the sannyasi and jnani. There were scholars in Mahishmati in all of these different philosophies and disciplines. They were towering figures in their own right. There were also scholars in Buddhism and Jainism. If you entered the walls of Mahishmati, it was walking into a cathedral of learning. There were professors and universities. Back in the day, universities were known as gurukulas. Guru means teacher, kula means clan, the clan of the teacher. Professors were known as acharyas. The city was filled with gurukulas and acharyas. Even amidst the staggering constellation of scholarship in this city, 2 people stood out, head and shoulders above everybody else. One was a man named Mandana Mishra, and another was a woman named Bharati Devi. They were husband and wife. They were ideal householders. They preached the philosophy of Mimamsa, the way of the householder, and they lived it. They created wealth. Their house was situated in a prosperous, affluent part of town. It was built on a raised platform, and there were many balconies and towers, gardens and gables, and a vast courtyard. It was said that this house could sleep 50 people every night, and the courtyard, Mandana Mishra and Bharati Devi fed hundreds of people in need morning and night. They were virtuous, they were disciplined, they were moderate. They had many children and grandchildren. They were healthy. They had great wealth. It was said that their health and wealth came from the performance of yajnas. Yajnas are ancient Vedic fire rituals done to propitiate gods. When I say gods, don't think about the god, but think about them as elemental powers, like the god of the power of the wind, the power of water, the power of thunder, the power of rain, and the power of fire, and so on. So when through the yajnas, when you gave offerings to them, the gods in return gave you health, wealth, and prosperity. Mandana Mishra, Bharati Devi, in the ancient city of Mahishmati, great towering giants of scholarship. One day, outside of their great house, it was a little past noon, say around 1 o'clock. It was a hot day. It's always sunny in India. And the courtyard was empty because the public lunch was over. Mandana Mishra and Bharati Devi had retreated back into their house in order to have their lunch. And the gate was opened by a young man. He was about 25 years. He was slight of build, almost on the thin side. He was wearing orange robes of a sannyasi, of a monk. His head was shaved, and in his hand was a wooden staff, a simple wooden staff, at the end of which was tied a small cloth. It formed into a bag which contained all of his material possessions. In his other hand was a small pot of water. He was bare feet. His eyes, it seemed, when they looked at you, they scanned your soul and immediately went to that spot, that corner of your soul, which was filled with regrets or anger or loneliness or sorrow, and made you feel better. So you felt that you had to follow him. There was an irresistible urge to not be away from this young sannyasi. So a small crowd had come with him. And with him also were 4 of his disciples, each of whom were twice his age. They were in their 50s. His name was Shankaracharya. The sannyasi, Shankaracharya, opened the gate, walked briskly across the courtyard, unmindful of the hot earth beneath him, climbs up the stairs to the door of the house. It's a very wealthy man's house, so it's not that the door is unlocked, but you just can't willy-nilly go in. So there was a doorman there, and Shankaracharya says, "Please summon your master and mistress." He says that in a firm voice. "Please summon your master and mistress. I challenge them to a debate that the way of the sannyasi is superior to the way of the householder. What a thing to say. Normally, you'd be ridiculed if you said something like that. See, these were people of great scholarship, and they were probably the wealthiest people in town. Think of them as the combination of Dr. Fauci and Bill Gates. You don't walk up to the house of a person like that and say, I challenge you, saying my way is superior to yours. But such was the magnetism of this young monk that the doorman wordlessly turned around, went inside, summoned Mandana Mishra and Bharati Devi, who were about to have lunch. The rule of the householder is that the guest is God. So when the guest shows up, you have to take care of the guest first. So they stop their lunch plans, and Bharati Devi comes and says, revered monk, welcome to our humble house. It is lunchtime. Let me give you some food. And she cooks for him equal parts rice and mung beans, mung dal, that's green beans, and then puts a little bit of ghee in it and a little bit of salt. And she makes them into 5 fist-sized balls like this. So it's not a lot of food. And she says, here is your food. And Shankaracharya takes 3 of those 5 balls and then walks outside, holds his hand out. Birds come in immediately and they eat 3 of those. And the remaining 2, he walks back into the house, takes the remaining 2, holds it in his hands, closes his eyes, and recites a verse from the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Brahmarpanam Brahma Havihi Brahmagyam Brahmanahutim Brahmaivatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhinaha. And what that means, Brahma means God. It says, I offer this food to God. The hand that eats this belongs to God. The fire that digests it is the fire of God. The nutrients that result from it goes back to God. In this way, if my every action is offered back to God, one day will I not see you, my Lord. Let that be soon. So he says that, and then very quickly, just 2 fist-sized balls, and he eats them and drinks a little bit of water from his water pot. That is his lunch. That is also his dinner. This is all he gets to eat.
Wow.
See, if you're thinking about becoming a monk or a renunciant, let me tell you the facts of life. These guys lead a very hard life. They're not allowed to cook in their own home. They're not allowed to even have a home. They go out, and if somebody gives them food, they eat, and if they don't eat. It's as simple as that. And when they give them food, whatever food they give, 3/5, 60%, has to be offered to other creatures in God's creation.
Wow.
Only 2/5 is what you get to eat. And this is it. So that's what Shankaracharya did. His simple meal over, and the guest being treated. Now Mandana Mishra sits and says, young monk, tell me the reason why your holy feet have graced my humble house today. And Shankaracharya looks at him and says, revered Acharya, O great scholar, your fame has spread far and wide throughout the country. You are regarded as the greatest authority on Mimamsa, the way of the householder, and Yagyas, fire ceremonies. I believe in Vedanta. I believe that the way out of pain and suffering is to turn away from life, renounce everything, and wait for divine wisdom to dawn. I believe my way is superior. I wish to debate with you on this topic. I challenge you to a debate. Now, Mandana Mishra, he's a little disdainful of sannyasis. He thinks they're a burden on society, that they don't do much. They just come in, take some food, and who knows what they do. Whereas he created wealth, he created a family, he takes care of the needy. But the crowd that had gathered outside had already heard the challenge, so he can't say no. Furthermore, Shankaracharya is no ordinary monk. He is regarded as the greatest spiritual genius. He's only 25. Okay. He's already written books that are changing the way people think about God. He has toured the length and breadth of India. This was before trains or there were horses, but he as a renunciant, he's walked the length and breadth of India, spreading his message. So he is no ordinary monk. Okay. So Mandana Mishra thinks, Let me put an end to this once and for all. I will debate him and be done with this and show that my way is superior. Yes, he agrees. And the debate is arranged. Word goes out in town. The great Shankaracharya and the great Mandana Mishra, the two giants of philosophy, are debating with each other. And so they build a stage in the courtyard itself, because it's a vast courtyard. And on the left and right of the stage, there are seats set up, Shankaracharya on one side, Mandana Mishra on the other, seats for 4 of their principal disciples. Behind and at the very center on a raised platform is a seat for the judge. Back in those days, debates didn't need moderators. There was nothing to moderate. People were expected to be civil and nice to each other, well-behaved, never raise their voices, and only debate the issues, not any ad hominem personal attacks. They were not allowed. And they were supposed to answer the question. You couldn't just give a pat answer no matter what the question was, unlike some of the debates that we see today. So moderators were not required, but judge was. You know why? Because every debate had to have an outcome. It's a debate, it's not an argument. So, but who would have the competence to judge the giant of Mimamsa, Mandana Mishra, and the giant of Vedanta, Shankaracharya? Who could that be? The crowd of scholars that had gathered in the courtyard, they are unanimous. They know who it is. They look at Bharati Devi and say, Mother, you have been like the goddess Lakshmi to all of us. You have fed us. You have asked after our welfare. But you are one of the greatest scholars, not just on Mimamsa, not just on Vedanta, but on all philosophical systems. You are the only one competent enough to judge who won and who lost. She accepts humbly. And the debate date is set. On the day of the debate, Bharati Devi, the judge, she walks in. She's wearing a simple white sari. Her hair is parted in the middle, and it's streaked with a 2-inch streak of vermilion powder. And right between the center of the eyebrows, a little bit higher on the forehead, exactly where the 6th chakra, spiritual eye, is, there's another little circle of vermilion. These are the marks of a married woman, of a householder. And in her hand are 2 garlands. They're made of jasmine. Their fragrance fills the entire courtyard. And she walks in with those, and she sits down, straight spine, and she says, let the contestants enter. In a quiet voice. She says, it's very melodious. It's like tinkling of bells, is how her voice is. She says, let the contestants enter.
It's just very interesting. I know that I haven't been speaking much. It's very interesting debate. Like, I mean, I'm very curious what the outcome of all of this is going to be, but it already, they're talking about who is superior. And for example, that doesn't work for me in my beliefs. I feel like we're all, part of the divine, and whichever way we want to attain stuff, I guess is up to us. There is no right and wrong way. So to me, even having a debate like that, it's driven out of ego rather than anything else. So I'm actually very curious how this is going to go.
Mandana Mishra walks in from the left of the stage. He's a tall man, well-built. His body is blooming with good health, but it's tempered by a lifelong practice of discipline and moderation. His piercing intellect, extraordinary intellect, and the zeal of his beliefs gives his gaze a sharp, unflinching quality. He comes and sits down on his seat along with his 4 disciples. Shankaracharya enters from the right. He's an unremarkable man physically, almost thin. He bows to the judge and comes and assumes his seat. His open face exudes an oceanic calmness that somehow seems to bring peace to anybody that looks at it. His limpid, liquid eyes are full of love. While Mandana Mishra is formidable in his self-confidence, Shankara is complete in his surrender to God. So the 2 giants of philosophy sitting opposite each other. And Bharati Devi gets up. She takes the garland, she puts it on her forearm, drapes them like this. She walks in and she addresses the crowd. She says, I picked these flowers. These garlands are made of jasmine. I picked these flowers this morning. And when the fragrance of the garlands fills the courtyard, I have infused them with my powers. Each contestant is going to wear this garland, and the one that loses, his garland will wilt and dry. It will remain fragrant for as long as the debate lasts, even if it goes on for days, because I have infused it with my powers. And so she walks up to Shankaracharya and she gives it to his disciple, and the disciple puts the garland on his master's neck. And she walks up to Mandana Mishra, her husband. She holds the garland in both her hands, stoops down, and puts the garland on his neck as a wife does for the husband. Her face is full of love, eyes are filled with tenderness and good wishes. But the moment the garland touches his neck, her eyes become expressionless. Her face becomes stern because she's now no longer the wife, she's the judge. She stands up with purposeful steps, walks up to the stage, sits down and says, "Contestants, make your opening statements." Is opening and declare your wager. Opening statements is where each contestant says what their position is, what they're going to defend. Wager, what will they do if they lose? As the challenger, Shankaracharya, you go first. So Shankaracharya begins to speak. He has a soft voice. It's never raised, but it's heard. It somehow fills the courtyard. He says, God is the only reality. When we turn away from all material pursuits and seek God to the exclusion of all else, we begin to glimpse God's presence. We begin to understand God's essence. And eventually, we will experience God as Satchidanandam, ever existing, ever new, in bliss. And in this moment of divine ecstasy, the veil of Maya, delusion, falls away, the universe disappears, and the soul declares, Aham Brahmasmi, I am the divine. And in this rising tide of infinite joy and bliss, pain and suffering are washed away. This is my position, and I'm going to defend this. If I'm unable to, I will cast away the robes of a sannyasi, I will get married, I will buy a house, and I will become a disciple of the great Acharya that's sitting in front of me, Mandana Mishra. Now all eyes turn towards Mandana Mishra. He says, it's a firm, strong voice. He's a professor. He's used to doing these things. He says, man's destiny is determined by his actions and his actions alone, nothing else. Mm-hmm. If a man works hard, creates wealth, takes care of his family and takes care of the needy, leads a disciplined life of moderation, then he will earn the right to health and happiness. If he's lazy, if he's evil, then he will experience disease and misery. It is only by unflinching devotion to duty, the performance of yajnas, and a life of virtue that pain and suffering can be eliminated. This is my position. If I'm unable to defend this, then he spreads his hands as if to encompass everything in front of him. He says, then I shall renounce my family, my children, my grandchildren, all my wealth, and I will become a disciple of this young monk, Shankaracharya, who sits in front of me.
Wow, very strong positions. I wonder if this is actually a real story, because it's very intense.
What a wager. And now, Bharati Devi says in her mellifluous voice, let the debate begin. Mandana Mishra is ready right off the bat. He says, young monk, you said, God is the only reality. I believe in what I see. I don't see God. I've never seen God. I don't know of anybody that has seen God. On the other hand, you said the entire universe is a delusion, doesn't exist. I see my family. I see the house that I built for them. I see the hundreds of people that I feed every day. You ask me to believe that what I see is unreal and what I don't see is real. How is this possible? The crowd nods. What a great point. Shankaracharya is ready. In a soft tone, he says, oh, great Acharya, great scholar, you have made a good point. But the eyes don't always perceive what is real. There is air all around you, but do you see it? Do you believe that the air is not real? And he goes on. Whatever the eye sees is not always true. I see your shadow right this moment. Is your shadow real? Out in the desert, there is a mirage. I see water. Is that real? Go beyond the senses, O great one, and perceive a reality that is far bigger. Mandana Mishra is nodding his head. This is an abstruse branch of philosophy known as epistemology, the sources of truth. Mandana Mishra, he's an expert on this. He has written not one, but 2 textbooks on this topic. You can buy it even today. I have them on my bookshelf. So he's ready. His rebuttal is immediate and is precise and cutting. He says that I know by experience that the shadow is not real because I have to touch it and there is nothing there. I know by repeated mistakes that there is no water in the desert, even though I might see it as a mirage. And I don't see the air, but I feel the wind, the hurricane, the typhoon, and the cyclone. So I know that air exists. What I don't see, I can infer, I can use logic. I don't need to see the fire. If I see smoke in the distance and there are trees, I know there is fire. So by inference and logic, I verify what I see. Mm-hmm. Can you prove to me, young monk, that God exists? I will accept it. And with that, he fixes Shankara with a piercing gaze that can only come from decades of study and experience and extraordinary confidence. Shankara meets his gaze, stares back unblinkingly for a moment with his large, peaceful eyes. Then he continues with the same soft tone, but now there is more resonance in it. And he declares, Ishvara asiddhaha, God cannot be proven. Mandana Mishra looks at him, raises an eyebrow as if mocking him, says, that's as if saying, he doesn't say it, but it's as if he says, that's convenient, isn't it? You can't see it, you can't prove it. There's nothing to argue. But he doesn't say it. And Shankaracharya meets it, stares him down for just another moment. And then he says, God is neither an object nor a concept. If God was an object, you could see it, smell it, taste it, and so on. If God were a concept, we could debate it and prove. God instead is an experience. The wise ones call it anubhava. A man wears a heavy, valuable golden necklace around his throat, and he searches frantically everywhere for it. But he doesn't find it because it's already on him. He says, God is like that, O Mandana Mishra. Don't look for him outside. It's the mind that perceives. It's the intellect, buddhi, that analyzes. Don't look for him in either place. Look for him in the stillness of your heart. He's already in there. Find him there. Now the crowd, who are so far on Mandana Mishra's side, he had the home court advantage. He was the local city boy. Now are beginning to get swayed by the arguments of this dynamic, charismatic young sannyasi. His simple arguments resonate with them. And so this way the debate proceeds. They peel the Indian philosophy like layers of an onion, laying it bare. But soon it's the end of the day. So the debate adjourns. Shankaracharya leaves the podium. He cannot stay in a house. He cannot cross a threshold in order to sleep. So he goes to an ancient temple on the outskirts of Mahishmati. And he finds a tree, places his staff, water pot, and his little cloth bag, goes into the Narmada river, bathes in its ice-cold waters, meditates with God, on God, for several hours, and falls asleep. Mandana Mishra and Bharati Devi, they are householders. Their duties never end. Those of you that have been householders, which is most of you, you know, no matter what's going on, some things have to be done. They feed 100 people, just like they do every day after this debate. And they don't talk to each other. They cannot. They maintain a vow of silence because one is the judge and the other is a contestant. They don't even look at each other, lest some unintended communication happen that way. They go through all of their householder duties, have a simple meal, and turn their backs to each other and fall asleep. Or the next day, at exactly 7:36 a.m., the debate begins. 7:36 a.m., what's so special, you ask? Indian calendar, daily calendar, is divided into hours of 48 minutes each. They're called muhurtas. The third hour after sunrise, which is 48 plus 48, 1 hour and 36 minutes, is the most auspicious muhurta to begin such things. It's called the muhurta of Mitra. It's the name of the sun. So 7:36 is when the debate begins. And for the next 14 days, the debate continues like this. They talk about Atman, the soul, Brahman, Brahman, God. And they talk about dharma, the way of righteousness, and artha, the need to make money. They talk about yajna, fire ceremonies, and bhakti, devotion. They talk about sannyasi, the way of the renunciant, and samsari, the way of the householder. Karma, action, jnana, wisdom, and most of all, how to liberate yourself from pain and suffering, moksha. The audience are enthralled. They have never heard such nuanced presentation and debate of these great and eternal philosophies, Atman, Brahman, yajna, bhakti, dharma, artha, samsara, sannyasa, karma, jnana, moksha. Everything is laid bare in front of them. And it goes on for another 14 days.
Wow.
And now it is the 16th day of debate. Mandana Mishra is beginning. His unwavering confidence is now shaken a little bit, just a little bit. In his framework of self-effort and discipline and virtue and yajnas, there was no room for God. He always thought that God was a concept invented by weaklings to justify their fear and laziness. But now in the presence of this charismatic young sannyasi, the spiritual genius, Shankaracharya, he is awakening to a higher reality. He's glimpsing something that lies beyond family and health and the body. He's beginning to glimpse a joy that could be far greater than what you get with family and possessions. And he knows that virtue and self-effort will give you happiness, but he also knows that it's an uphill battle. It's so easy to slip from personal experience. It's so easy to slip. and slide back into the cesspool of suffering beneath, and so much harder to claw your way back. So he knows even in the system of Mimamsa, help is needed. And he asks himself, could that be God? He wants to find out. He's a man of action. The debate is coming to a climax. The questions are rapid fire now. Mandana Mishra asks, what is the relationship between soul and God, soul and spirit? Shankara answers back. Says they're related in the same way that the sun and its reflection are related. There is only one sun that warms and lights up the entire world, but his reflection can be seen in ponds and lakes and streams and rivers. The soul and spirit are the same way. There is only one God who is reflected in all the souls. A piece falls into place in Mandana Mishra's mind. And then he says, revered sannyasi, you say that God is omnipresent. He's present in every atom of creation and in every soul. If he's omnipresent, why can't I see him? He cannot let go of that. Why can't I see him? And Shankaracharya looks at him, smiles, and he says, if you take a glass of water, add some salt into it. Where is the salt? And Mandana Mishra says, it's dissolved in water. Can you see it? No. Has the salt vanished? No, it's right there. And then Shankaracharya asks, if you take the teeniest sip of salt, of water, will you taste salt? Will you feel it? Mandana Mishra says, of course I feel it. And he says, if I take the glass and pour half of it out, will salt still be there? Yes. If I take the glass and retain only 10 drops of salt water, will the salt still be there? Yes. What about 1 drop? It will still be there. Half a drop, it will still be there. Is there anything you can do to the water that you can remove salt from it?
No.
No. That is exactly how God is. He is present in every atom of creation. He's Vishya, all pervading, but at the same time, he's beyond creation, Paramapurusha. He's both at the same time. Many pieces click into place in Mandana Mishra's mind. His face is aglow with the discovery of a thrilling new experience through new knowledge. But he's not done yet. He's a man of action, so he has one more question. He says, revered monk, I have one more question for you. How can I experience God? How can I get that experience? Shankaracharya says, there was once a man from Gandhara. Gandhara is a nation which today is Afghanistan. He came to India and he was in a forest and he was robbed. And robbers put a blindfold and tied his hands. And the man desperately wanted to get back to Afghanistan. So he walked around, he stumbled, he fell, he got injured, he got up again, he continued to walk days, months. He's unable to find Afghanistan. He has a memory of his hometown. It's getting dimmer and dimmer, but that memory is making him go there. He goes, the air smells like Afghanistan. I'm here. He's joyful. And then the next day, it's gone. And then Shankara says, one day another man comes. He has been to Afghanistan before. He unties this man's blindfold and his hands and says, over there is Afghanistan. And the man goes, that is how you find God at one day. It needs the help of one that already knows where you're going, one that already has been where you're going. It needs the help of another person, of God contact. That is a Sadguru. That is your Guru. And when the Guru finds you, you too will find God. Mandana Mishra is almost ready now. His heart is overflowing with joy because he knows he's found the greatest gem that one can find. But then he still has one more question. He says, young monk, then what about the life of a householder and virtue? Has it all been a waste? Shankara vigorously says, no. In fact, that is the cornerstone of life. It is through actions that we purify the heart. Actions are clarifying. Your life as a householder and having taken care of the needy and lived a virtuous life is what has purified your heart. A pure heart is ready to reflect the light of God. And when the heart is pure, when the disciple is ready, the Guru will come. And Shankara leans forward, and now Mandana Mishra perceives him as something far greater. He's no longer the young monk. And Shankara asks him, Mandana Mishra, Acharya, are you ready? He knows what is being asked of him. His heart overflows with joy that he has found his Guru. And he bows to Shankaracharya, says, yes, Guru Deva, I am ready. Accept me as your disciple. And in that moment, his garland wilts and the flowers drop to the floor like so much potpourri. The crowd gasps. Bharati, the crowd is awestruck by Shankaracharya's brilliance. Mandana Mishra is wonderstruck by his new discovery. But Bharati Devi on the stage is thunderstruck at what just happened. And she thinks about this. She too is swayed by the magnetism and the arguments of Shankaracharya. She cannot deny it. She too feels the thrill of impending God contact. But on the other hand, this has consequences for her. And she feels that her questions too need to be answered. She is Mandana Mishra's wife. It's not his decision to make. So she descends down from the stage, comes to Shankaracharya, bows to him and says, revered sannyasi, I am half of Mandana Mishra's life. It is not yet his to renounce unless you answer my questions too. Lord, will you debate me as well? Shankaracharya thinks about this. He is a sannyasi. In front of him is a woman. He's not even supposed to look up at a woman. How can he sit there and debate with her? But then he realizes the one in the form of a woman is perhaps Goddess Saraswati, the goddess of learning herself. Her scholarship is reputed to be even greater than Mandana Mishra's. So he thinks for a moment, comes to a decision and says, revered lady, O incarnation of Saraswati, it would be my honor to debate you. And the debate between Bharati Devi and Shankaracharya begins. Now, Mandana Mishra's knowledge was stunning in its depth. Bharati Devi had both depth and breadth. So she begins to ask him questions about Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, and of course, Mimamsa and Vedanta. She keeps asking him. There's such rapid fire back and forth of these questions. Shankara's clipped and brief to the point answers, but such is the erudition, scholarship, and brilliance of Bharati Devi that even Shankaracharya, perhaps the greatest philosophical genius of all time, he too has to take a time out every now and then to answer a subtle point that she has raised. And this debate too proceeds for 15 days. 16th day dawns, 7:36 a.m., the 16th day. Now, there are as many women in the crowd as there are men, because one of their own is engaging in a debate. In the debate with Mandana Mishra, the crowd they were applauding and cheering one or the other. But with Bharati Devi and Shankaracharya, the level of the debate is so great that the crowd, which consists of great scholars, they have long been left in the dust. They don't know what's going on. They can only follow the bhav. They can feel the debate. So the crowd is silent throughout, and they're looking back and forth. The rapid-fire staccato rhythms of questions and answers, it's like popping corn. Pop, pop, pop. It just keeps going that way. That's all the crowd knows. So on the 16th day, 7:36 a.m., the crowd sits in anticipation. Is today the day that Bharati Devi, who has been like the goddess of prosperity, Lakshmi, for them, is she going to become goddess Saraswati and defeat Shankaracharya himself in debate? Because it feels like she's gaining the upper hand. And Bharati Devi sits down. In her tone like tinkling of bells, she asks him, revered sannyasi, I have one last question for you. You described the moment of divine bliss, that singular moment of joy, which was so great that the soul is not aware of anything internal and external. And you said that divine bliss gave you emancipation from pain and suffering. Every householder experiences a similar bliss during the act of procreation. And in that moment, the mind is not aware of anything internal or external. Why is it that while divine bliss can emancipate you, the bliss of procreation is unable to? Shankaracharya is now stumped. He took renunciation at the age of 8. He experienced divine bliss at the age of 10, but he's never experienced sensual pleasures. He doesn't know the pleasure of having a perfectly balanced meal where all the spices go perfectly well together. He's never known that pleasure. He doesn't know the pleasure of owning possessions, certainly not the pleasure of procreation. You can't make up stuff in these debates. I told you, these were very erudite, scholarly debates. He's stumped. So he says, Bharati Devi, O pious woman, would you please give me 30 days? Then I'll come back and answer your question. She says, okay, let's meet back here in 30 days. And she looks at him he says, 7:36 a.m. We'll be here 30 days from now. And he rapidly leaves with his 4 disciples, goes deep into the forest, deep where he cannot be found. The previous day, word has reached everybody that the king in the neighboring kingdom had died, and his body is still in stasis, not yet cremated. Shankaracharya sits down in the middle of a dense forest in full lotus pose, closes his eyes, uses his yogic powers to stop his breath. He withdraws all the energy inward into the realm of the chakras. Muladhara, the energy rises up, the rising tide of Kundalini, Swadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha, and finally Agnya, Kutastha, the place where the 3 nadis meet. And this great energy, all of his energy, his vitality along with Kundalini, has come here. And now, like a deluge breaching a dam, this energy of Shankaracharya, this prana of Shankaracharya breaches the Kutastha, the Agnya, and opens a subtle channel called Brahmanadi. And the wave of energy sweeps up the Brahmanadi and gathers his soul like a wave in the ocean gathers a surfboard. The soul rides this wave of energy, emerges out through a little opening at the top of the head, and within half a second, for soul and energy, where is time? Within half a second, it travels across to the neighboring kingdom, where the king lies dead, enters his head, and the prana spreads through his body. There are his wives, his ministers, his friends, they're all grieving, and then they see his body filled with lifeblood.
Wow.
And the king stretches, yawns, and without so much as a how do you do, gets up and walks away with his entourage following him. They are stunned. What just happened? They're asking, but they don't want to question it. What a great thing it is. The soul of Shankaracharya, which was purified of all desire many lifetimes ago, now proceeds to do the duties of a householder, to enjoy the pleasures and dispense with the responsibilities of a householder. Mm-hmm. Everybody senses that there is something in the new king. There is a wellspring of peace that is both mysterious and irresistible. And as the king goes through, in those 29 days, he accomplishes more for the administration of the state than previous king had done throughout his entire reign. He holds great big banquets. He acquires new arms, weapons, and he becomes a complete householder. 29 days later, one night, he calls all of his closest people, his wives, his children, his ministers and friends, and blesses them as if saying goodbye, lies down, doesn't get up again. This time he's truly dead. Half a second later, Shankaracharya's body, which was sitting in full lotus in the depths of a remote forest, the pasty skin begins to pulse with lifeblood.
Wow.
And a moment later, Shankaracharya's body shudders, and then he wakes up. The disciples are there. They bow to their master, marveling at this extraordinary feat of yogic powers, siddhis. And then Shankaracharya walks back. Next day, 7:36 a.m., the debate begins. Bharati Devi asks him, "Revered sir, do you have an answer to my question?" Shankaracharya says, "O incarnation of Saraswati, I do. Pain and pleasure are a part of life. We indulge in sense pleasures, whether it's a great big banquet or the acquisition of possessions or the pleasure of procreation. We indulge in them to forget the pain. But nothing has changed at the end of it. The pain is still there. So this pleasure is temporary." And he says, this pleasure is external. You need somebody else to experience sense pleasures. You need something else. It's dependent on something. Mm-hmm. Either another person or good health to enjoy good food or money to enjoy possessions. And therefore it is subject to duality. That pleasure brings with it pain. So it's temporary and external. And he says, you say the pleasure of procreation is a singular moment of extreme joy. And I can tell you that the pleasure of divine bliss is 100, 1,000, 1,000,000 times greater than that. So sense pleasures will not emancipate you because they are temporary, they are limited, and they are external. Divine bliss is the bliss of the soul. It doesn't need anything external. He quotes a verse from the Gita. He says, "Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogathan atmanyeva atmanatushtaha sthita pragnastadochyate." Prajahati sarvan Prajahati kaman sarvan manogathan. Prajahati means turning your back, giving up. Kaman, desires. Sarvan manogatan, all of them that have entered the mind. All the desires that have entered the mind, if you turn your back on them. Atmanyeva atmanatushtaha. Atma means soul. The soul finds contentment. Atmanyeva. In what? It finds contentment. Atmanatushtaha. In itself. The soul finds contentment in itself. Mm-hmm. That is the moment of divine bliss. It's neither external, nor limited, nor temporary. It is ever existing, ever new, infinite, and inherent. And that is why, O pious lady, divine bliss is different from the bliss of procreation or all other sense pleasures. Bharati Devi is satisfied with the answer. And then, but she has one final question. She says, if this were the case, if the way of sannyasa is so much better, then how can life go on? Who will have children? Who will provide the bodies through which we can work out our karma? Won't the world come to an end? Shankaracharya says, no, it doesn't. It's not everybody's dharma to become a sannyasi. Only a few of them have that destiny. For most people, you have to be a householder. But then he says a very important thing. He says, Bharati Devi, be like the lotus leaf. When it rains on a lotus leaf, the lotus leaf doesn't get wet. Why? because water slides off the lotus leaf.
Mm.
Be like that. Go through life's experiences. Let it rain on you, both pleasure and pain, but be undisturbed by it. And he continues on. Be like the wind. The wind carries the stink of manure and the fragrance of a rose, but it itself is unaffected. And in that way, be a channel for life's experiences, but maintain an inner separation. It is that inner renunciation that is the key to emancipation. So be a sannyasi even while a samsari, while some people can be a sannyasi and dedicate their lives. And this is how the world goes on. Bharati Devi Mandana Mishra, who was sleeping on the threshold because his status was unclear whether he was a renunciant or not. He was just there, silently, sitting at the feet of his guru. They both fall at Shankaracharya's feet, accept his blessings. And so ended. And then they become sannyasis. And in fact, later on, when Shankaracharya establishes a monastery in southern India called Sringeri, the first guru of that monastery was none other than Mandana Mishra. And even today, you can find a sanctuary to Bharati Devi right there in the precincts of the temple, front and center. In fact, the main temple in Sringeri is dedicated to none other than Saraswati, who is believed to have come through Bharati Devi on that day. So ends the 32-day argument among three Indians whose echoes have reverberated across time and space and stays with us even today. Shankaracharya himself wrote a verse which captured much of this. He said, it's a beautiful verse, Satsangatve nissangatvam, nissangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nischalatatvam, nischalatatvam, jivan muktihi. Satsanga, sangha means attachment, but also company. Satsanga, true company, meaning company of like-minded individuals. Satsangatve, from satsanga comes nissangatvam. Ni means negative, sangha means attachment. When you have the company of like-minded spiritual people, it will help you be less attached to material things. Nissangatve nirmohatvam. When as you develop detachment, moha means desire, nirmoha, diminution or vanishing of desires. As your attachments reduce, your desires reduce and vanish. Then what happens? Nirmohatve, nischalatatvam. Chala means move. Nischala means stillness. As your desires vanish, nischalatatvam, you see the stillness principle within you, you experience it. Nischalatatve, jivan muktihi. It is that stillness principle, the vibrationless reflection of cosmic spirit that will emancipate you from pain and suffering. This was the end result of the debate. And it's the inspiration behind Ananda's spiritual communities, because it all begins with satsanga, company of spiritually minded individuals in their singular quest to find nischala, stillness, through the path of meditation. Thank you. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Wow. I first did not. What is this? Wow. Interesting. I've never heard of this debate before. First, I thought it was like some sort of a mystical made-up story, but it was like a real story. It's very interesting. How I've been hearing that it is this debate is very alive, or people in India are very aware of that. There is a lot to process. I'm not gonna lie, but I think in essence, what he was trying to get to, and correct me if I'm wrong, life is about balance. God is like, if we think about from maybe physical point of view, you have plus and minus as polarities, right? And that is all God. So you are, in essence, if you judge the creation, you're judging God, right? So, and I really love the example of Lotus, like how to attain the stillness and peace. And I think that is indeed the kind of way of life, and how we should be looking at things, and for it not to affect us. It's very beautiful. And I don't know what you guys think in terms of what is the preferred way of life. I approach my life more from like be kind to everyone. And during that talk, a story from, I don't know, do you guys know Jay Shetty? He's very popular in the Western media. He's got a very popular podcast, and he used to be a monk, and he has several teachings. And either it was from him or I read it in some other book. There is also Robin Sharma, very popular. He wrote things like The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Either in this book or with the teachings of Jay Shetty, basically, somewhere it was that one of them basically didn't want to leave the monk life, because I think it was more like the Robin Sharma book, actually. It's coming to me. Because it was amazing to, live that kind of life for him and what he has achieved as when he was a monk. And I think that's the second example in the story. But the point they were trying to draw there was the fact that, you learn this, but the real test comes when you come to the real world. And I think it's basically based on what the story was saying, that it's based on your dharma, if you like, your purpose. The way that's kind of how I translate dharma for myself. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. And I think we need, like, the whole creation is God, and I think the point of the story was that you can do more good in the real world to try to teach people those teachings and embrace it. So yeah, very, very, very interesting debate. I think we're all God's creation, and we should always be nice and respectful to one another. And the key, I feel like it was nicely mentioned, is the detachment from the pain and suffering. I feel like for us, though, to grow, we almost, I guess, depends on every person how spiritually evolved they are. But if you have two polarities, like black and white, plus and minus, it is a creation, and you need one for the other. And this is why it is so amazing how the universe is actually being built. But I don't think that we are currently as a world able to just, let's say, go to life, or a life light, or I think you need that balance. And part of that balance is also being detached from the material stuff in order to seek our inner peace. So wow, this was really great. I wonder where you stand when it comes to ending pain and suffering. So I would be happy to hear your thoughts, and let me know when was the first time you actually heard about this debate and what you learned from it. I would be very curious to know in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching and listening. It's been really great. And if you like this video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. And I hope to see you in the next one. Until then, you take care. Much love. Bye-bye.